So there's a few things that have been sustaining me through quarantine. A number of them are food items, but I've also gotten really into and come to rely on a few Instagram accounts. One of them is Live from Snack Time. Can't recommend it highly enough. Go follow Live from Snack Time on Instagram. And then the other one is Nate Pyle's Strange Planet. He's a cartoonist, and all of his cartoons are based on these aliens that have apparently come to Earth and are trying to figure out how they live here. And so they interact like humans do, but with a little bit of a twist. Their language is a little different. And I love his cartoons. And one of them that came out a year or so ago has some of the aliens gathered around. They're playing cards, and one of them stubs their toe. And like a lot of us do when we do something like that, the others begin to relate. You know, the one who stubs his toe says he feels so ignorant for stubbing his toe. And the other one says, oh, don't. I sliced myself with this document, and he's got a paper cut. And one of them says, I chomped my own flavor muscle because he's bitten his tongue. And so they're all talking about these things that just sort of happen to everyone. And then the last one says, I don't know how to use my life. And the other one says, well, that's a slightly different example. And the last one says, well, we can associate. This is something we can all relate to. And I don't know how to use my life became this wildly popular sentiment with Nate Pyle's fans. You can now get it on a t-shirt or a coffee mug or in the most 2020 commemoration possible on a face mask. I don't know how to use my life is the thing that resonated with people. It seems that knowing how to use our lives is actually a real challenge for us. And I'm left to wonder this weekend in particular if it's because we've so often failed to properly acknowledge this holiday. I never gave much thought to Labor Day growing up, even though it was often a fun weekend for my family closing out summertime with family friends on road trips. I don't know that it ever even occurred to me to ask why there was such a day. The U.S. Department of Labor tells us that Labor Day is a creation of the labor movement and is dedicated to the social and economic achievements of American workers. It constitutes a yearly national tribute to the contributions workers have made to the strength, prosperity, and well-being of our country. You know, perhaps when we did things in the past like commission Sunday school teachers at this time of year, we also ought to have been commissioning accountants and plumbers and lawyers and day laborers and artists and engineers. Maybe it would have helped us with Christianity's, I think, deepest 21st century issue, the enormous disconnect between Sunday morning and the rest of the week, the disconnect between what we do in church and what we do in the rest of our lives. Have we talked and thought enough about what our faith means to our work, what it means to the things we do every day and not just on Sunday? Work. It's a huge part of our lives. William Faulkner once observed that you can't eat for 8 hours a day or drink for 8 hours a day. All you can do for 8 hours a day is work. And then he concludes, which is the reason why man makes himself and everybody else so miserable and unhappy. Work. No matter what we're doing, work is important simply because we give so much of our time and ourselves to it. It's how we use our lives, whether we planned to spend them that way or not. And so how we look at and value our work is of critical importance to our faith, if for no other reason than that's how we spend a lot of our time. And work can look like many things that can be paid or unpaid in the home or out of it. But whatever it is, the law tells us that God cares a lot about it. There are tons of commandments about when and how work ought to be done and about how we value the work and lives of other people. You know, there was a time at the beginning of pandemic where we really did honor often overlooked workers. Grocery store clerks became heroes, teachers deserved massive paychecks, sanitation workers were indispensable and the recipients of our gratitude. Hospital workers of all kinds were so essential, they had to work even when sick themselves, even in fear for their families. And we cheered them, sometimes quite literally. But then time dragged on. And we got bored and frustrated and anxious, and suddenly a couple of extra dollars an hour seemed unnecessary for our most essential workers. Teachers became martyrs forced to sacrifice themselves on the altar of normalcy. and we stopped listening to healthcare workers pretty much altogether. We've been asked to accept this gruesome calculus of how many lives are an acceptable loss to maintain a robust economy. A robust economy that we must finally realize is only robust for a fraction of Americans. And so as that time dragged on, we fell into one of the oldest sins there is, the sin of treating people as units of production that move the economy, treating people as products or producers. And this argument is nothing new in the history of the United States economy. This has been made painfully obvious as the realities of racial inequity have led to higher COVID-19 deaths among communities of color. And while politicians gesture at heroically sacrificing one's own life for the good of the economy, they know it will likely not be their own life that's sacrificed. We know from history that when people's value is reduced to what they can contribute to the economy, they are dehumanized. They become producers and products. They become a means to an end, profit in the eyes of the powerful. And so the particular, unique, made in God's image human is rendered abstract, invisible, and disposable. For us, it started with chattel slavery, and it continues today in prison labor, oppressive conditions in factories and plants, and failure to pay some of our most necessary workers a wage that can support them and their families. Our relationship with work is a long way from what God intended for us. The story of the Exodus that we're reading through right now in the lectionary is a story of being set free from literal slavery and from the tyranny of a life that forgets how to value people as people. It's such a crucial story for us now, friends. Today we read the story of the Passover in all its remarkable specificity about what God's people are to do. Now, if you've read the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, you find in it a lot of specificity. God has given the people a very particular way of living. And it's a way that leaves room for work and rest in healthy measure, and that demands an end to the oppression of one group of people for the economic well-being of others. And so Passover is a celebration of the people's first liberation from slavery. The Passover celebrates freedom and life and safety for a deeply persecuted people. The Passover focuses on freedom and safety, but it also focuses on the need for community. So note in verse 4 of Exodus 12, if a household is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join its neighbor in obtaining one, and the lamb will be divided in proportion to the number of people who will eat it. So small families don't need a whole lamb, and larger families need more than a whole lamb. So why not join forces and eat together in order that all may have proportionately enough? It is these things, friends, freedom and safety and community where resources are shared, they're the same things we'll have to focus on as well if we want to right our relationship with work and remember what it is to value the life of each person in all their unique, flawed, and beloved glory. Valuing our own work in a healthy way will help us value the work of others. So if I don't believe that I have value to the world beyond what I contribute with my work, how can I value others? And so I begin then by honoring the image of God in myself, knowing myself as God's good creation, no matter what I do, allowing my mind and body to rest so that I can do good work. And when I am free from my belief that my life's value lies in my productivity, I can set others free too. I can see the value in all other people. I can partner with God in creating a world where all work is honored and no human life is taken for granted. Where all people, from migrant farm workers to hospital janitors to teachers to CEOs, are treated with dignity and kindness and given justice. I've seen a lot of sentiment since March about being more polite in public and showing extra love to workers at the grocery store and to the mail carrier and delivery drivers and other folks who couldn't just shelter at home when the world got terrifying. Because people are extra stressed, and sometimes that comes out against those who don't really deserve it. And so we asked each other to be kind and to tip well, and we applauded and we made yard signs to say thank you. And I think all of that is wonderful. I am for us being kinder to each other and being more grateful. But I would suggest that for the Christian, this is not sufficient, especially for Christians who live with power and privilege. We get to exercise our power when we vote, when we buy things, when we choose how to run our businesses and how to hire and pay people. The Lord has called us to kindness, yes, but also to justice. And we must see now that there is little justice in American work life. And there is something all of us can do to advocate for it being better, to work for change in our own spheres of influence, and to honor the work of all people. We get to be a people who work for liberation, for ourselves and for everyone. Friends, there are really just two things that I want you to know, certainly from this sermon, but really in life, two things that I want you to know. And the first is that you are infinitely loved and cherished by God in all of your own particularity, not because of what you do or what you produce, but because of who you are. If tomorrow your job and livelihood disappeared, that divine spark that lives in you would shine just as brightly, and your belovedness would be unchanged. And the second thing I would want you to know is that that is true of every single other person on the planet. So we are kind, yes, but we are also just people. And on this Labor Day weekend, we remember to be people of justice, especially in our work. How can God use you in your life, in your work, right where you already are, to be an agent of justice and peace, and to make the world reflect a bit better the love of the God who created it? How, friends, will you let God use your life? I hope that question haunts you this week in the name of the one who created and redeemed and sustains your life. Amen.